can't make it this afternoon. Is that all right? If anybody has an objection, please let me know. Right, so just to get back to what I was saying before, now you've got the visual that goes with the words. So I'll not go through everything again because I'm sure you heard all of that, but basically this is a new project for Newcastle City Learning. It's an exciting project. We are now collaborating with Shinshiro in Japan, and so there's 2 centres there that will also be submitting photographs. So very keen to welcome them on board, and Newcastles of the World is facilitating this exchange. There could well be other Newcastles coming in on this, but obviously we don't want this to get too big because there's a danger it could spiral out of control. So just keeping it to Japan is probably quite a good idea. So they are going to be doing exactly the same as we are, and that is taking images that are going to showcase a day in the life of Newcastle. And at the end of the 6 weeks, then that's when we're going to hold our exhibition, give or take a week or two, and so we'll be showcasing those images in the City Library, in the window space as mentioned before, and we'll also be showcasing those images online as well. So really exciting project to get involved with. So aims of the session today, basically this is going to be our intro to the course. We'll look at the course outline, which is not set in stone. It will have to be flexible to a certain extent. We're going to have a look at ideas regarding a day in the life, and so it'll be kind of a personal approach how you would like to approach a day in the life. We're going to look at those ideas. We're going to consider photo shoot locations, and that is going to be done in breakout rooms, technology willing. In our theory this afternoon, we're going to take a look at a frame within a frame and how to really work with a strong composition, no matter what the subject matter that we're looking at. And then, all being well, we shall conclude with an editing project, and that will be using Photoshop calculations to create a very different type of black and white, and also a very quick black and white. So that's what we have to look forward to this afternoon. So the course outline, as it stands at the moment, obviously week 1 we've got our sharing of ideas and everything I've just mentioned and the collaboration aspect. Then next week I would like to propose a photo shoot. And so that photo shoot will give us a chance to capture some material and hopefully just get out and about with the cameras as a group once again. So for that photo shoot, the suggestion would be, initially for the first one, will be to meet at 1 o'clock outside of the Theatre Royal. Now, there will be tasks to do and there will be walking involved. So if anybody has any issues about either the walking or anything else, then please get in touch with me just so that we know about it in advance. So again, just think about that for next week. So that is the proposal next week, to meet 1 o'clock outside of the Theatre Royal. Week 3, we're looking at a webinar. So again, that will be processing work from week 2. We'll be looking at the critique and discussion of creative techniques. Okay, so we just look at the calendar. So we've got our 3 weeks and then it's half term. So there'll not be a class during week commencing the 31st of May. So Friday the 5th of June, Friday the 4th of June, there will not be a class. But then we will meet again, and that will be Friday the 11th of June for week 4. And so that will be another photo shoot to be determined by yourselves and preferences as they're fed through to me. Week 5, we have Friday the 18th of June. So we'll be looking at presenting our images, and that webinar will be about the printing aspect and showcasing images in the best possible light. And then we'll probably finish up with a photo shoot on the 25th. Now that may well be that we need another week on the course in order to discuss anything that's outstanding, and also to collate all of the material. So it could be that this extends to 7 weeks. Has anybody got any questions or anything to say at this point? No? Okay, we'll move on then. Right, so the format that this is going to take, what we'll be looking for will be 3 images from each person. The images need to go inside of an A4 size mount. Within that mount, you can choose the choice of aperture. So in other words, the hole that's going to be cut out for your image to be showcased. So you can decide if you want to have a square format or whatever size that you want that aperture to be. But it has to be in an A4 mount, and it needs to be a light coloured A4 mount. The sort of thing that we use for RPS, so it's light beige. The print quality must be consistent. So, if there is sort of abnormalities in the print, then it's obviously not going to be put forward. So print quality has to be very good, and it has to look the same across your 3 images. All right, so again, that's really important. So in the printing session, we'll be discussing different venues where you can get images printed, and I would suggest that you have them printed professionally for this particular task, unless you have a really good printer which can actually reproduce colours accurately and print in excellent standard. And then the exhibition, as we said, will be at the City Library. Did somebody want to say something there?
Jane, I think we're missing. Yes, me. It's Sheila.
Yes.
We missed a little bit of that. You went quiet.
Oh, before the end? Before exhibition?
Yes. Yeah, about printing. You were talking about print quality.
Oh.
Whether we print our own or...
Yeah, so print quality, what I was saying is, if you have sort of an excellent printer with several different inks in it, so it'd be like a professional standard printer that can reproduce images to a very high quality, that's fine. Otherwise, I would certainly suggest, for what it costs, would be to have your prints done professionally, because not many people print a great deal and tend to either use a professional service or tend to submit images electronically, share them electronically. But if you're printing all the time and you've got a very good printer, that's fine. And if it passes the quality control stage, no problem there. Otherwise, the suggestion will be to have them done professionally, and that is really quite a large area for discussion, and that will be something we'll look at separately. Okay, so again, if you have any questions as we're going through, then please just flag them up.
I'm just thinking about the A4 size mount. The prints are going to be quite small, aren't they?
Yes, they are, and this is due to limitations of space within, what the actual location that we've got in Princess Square. So yes, the prints aren't going to be huge.
Right. And are they all going to be hung in landscape and portrait mode? Hello?
Yes.
Jane, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm listening.
Jane?
Yes.
Yeah, the question was, when they're hung, will there be a mix of in landscape and portrait A4
Yes.
size?
Yes, that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
that it will have to be that way because obviously, some images lend themselves very well to portrait orientation, some to a landscape orientation. So it's really, just what we have to do, the combination of the two.
Okay.
Okay. Right, so now, again, technology willing, we're going to go into breakout rooms. So, okay then, so what we'll do is we'll just feed back if we manage to get any sort of discussion going. Okay, so from group 1, have we got a spokesperson?
We didn't nominate anybody, Jane, and the only two things we only discussed a couple of things because we had so little time relative to the sound.
Okay,
but,
so what came out of your discussion?
Well, the first thing was a day. What's a day? Is it 24 hours? And the other thing is, what's the geography we're looking at? What is Newcastle, in inverted commas? Is it from top to bottom, left to right? So it's like the city centre, as it were. Because I've seen on the Newcastles of the world previous stuff about Newcastle, which included Hadrian's Wall and the coast and all sorts. But I think that we concluded that it was just the city centre boundary. As I think that's what Sheila said as well, the boundaries of the actual city centre.
Yeah, so
I think that goes from Leazes to Oosburn and from the central motorway down to the quayside.
Yeah, so we're not doing an extended vision of Newcastle, so we're just keeping it within the boundaries of the city.
Yeah, and is it 24 hours within the city?
Yeah, so it's 24 hours within the city.
Yeah, so who's getting up at midnight?
No, but you don't, let's be clear, you don't have to do that. That's just the period that you can do if you wish to do so. Yeah, so it's a personal approach. We don't need to sort of get up at crazy o'clock to do this. It could be you do one shot in the morning, you could do one shot midday, one shot in the evening, but it could actually be you take the shots over different days, but you put them together as a day in the life. So it could be your midday shot wasn't that good, but then you go back another day and repeat it. Yeah,
but that's about as far as we got, isn't it, people? We didn't really we didn't discuss anything other than that.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. And so with
sorry. Can't hear you, Jane.
No, I wasn't saying anything. I was waiting for somebody else to speak. Ali, were you going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with what Graham said. Basically, we didn't have much time, but it's basically just what was just said.
Okay, so that's at least started the ball rolling. And so the question to group 1, do you have a preference for any group photo shoots?
In terms of the city centre location, all going out together. Sheila made the point, I think, Sheila, didn't you, that it was something like it needs to be people doing things that we're showing as representing a day in the life of. Is that what you said, Sheila? I think it was.
Well, I'm thinking about activity. It's because we've got some very interesting architecture, etc. But when you think of day in their life, you're thinking of people doing things like this and
So picking up on that thing and picking up on the day and everything, a good place, a place that I personally would go probably early in the morning would be into the Granger Market, see them setting up for the day.
It's funny you should say that because I was thinking of Mark Tony's. Because that's quite an iconic cafe down in Granger Street, down there.
Is that still open? Because they've shut their shop in the Granger Market.
Well, it'll be shut at the minute.
I mean, it's gone, like it's split.
It's up for sale.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's up for sale as a going concern, so I think it will reopen.
Well, but Granger Market is iconic in Newcastle. And there's activity. But one of the things I found about the Granger Market, it would be best to get the permission to do it, because they're so much more accommodating. Because I've been on a RPS photo shoot around there, and the difference, we actually had a guide from the Granger Market took us up onto the upper deck and everything like that. So getting permissions might add quite a bit to this project. I quite liked that as being places down by the central station. But I think I like what Sheila said about this business of showing Newcastle being active rather than just going and photographing an iconic building in the sunset or the sunlight or whatever. Those are my thoughts. What about other people?
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So a very useful contribution to get the ball rolling. But don't forget, this isn't a group approach. This is going to be an individual approach to the way you see a day in the life of Newcastle. So it could be that you want to show perhaps the architectural side and you want to show it in different lights. And don't forget, there's 1,001 ways to depict architecture with or without people in the frame. So, you know, it really is a very wide remit, but it's all about the personal approach. So don't feel as if, you know, you've got to kind of do what everybody else is doing. And at the end of this, I will be asking you to email me by Thursday what your intention is as far as project ideas are concerned, and that's really just to avoid duplication of effort. So, you know, we don't want to have like 14 pictures of the Baltic taken from the same angle and viewpoint. It's about variety, and so, you know, that's something to bear in mind. So I will be asking you, if you can at this stage, because we've been thinking about this for a few weeks now, is to just email me with that personal approach. Right, so that was the thoughts from group 1. And group 2, do we have a spokesperson?
Didn't get that far, unfortunately.
Okay, would anybody like to speak or share any thoughts?
I think the only thing that we managed to agree between the three of us was that we should have people on pictures, and that was what really echoing what
Right, Graham, can I just ask you to mute your mic, please? And Sheila.
Came up with, so I'm right, aren't I, Lisa? I think there was a few people.
Right, Nick, can you just repeat that, please?
Jane, you disappeared, broke up and disappeared.
I disappeared. Or has Nick disappeared? Or both of us?
Well, it was really what Graham's report would bring the whole thing to life, and it, you know, it's also a real feeling of the time people are going to conduct. Sorry,
I can hear
both of you. I think including people would also give the photographs a feeling of the time. You know, the 20 to come and look at the photographs, then it would give a real flavour of Newcastle in 2021.
I mean, everybody has to be wearing masks.
well.
We know it's by next week. Maybe another thing we can do.
Exactly, yeah. Okay.
So have we lost Jane or the other?
No, I can hear you. Can you not hear me? This is so frustrating this afternoon.
I can now.
Yeah, you can now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're very intermittent, Jane.
Yeah, so it seems. So we might have to change things again for future. Right. Right.
I think everybody needs to cross out themselves off the breakout room, and it'll stop the feedback.
Well, the breakout rooms are closed now, so if you have got tabs still open for breakouts, just close them across the top.
close that straight away.
Yeah, so you should just have your main tab open, and then what you can see as I'm sharing my screen. Okay, that's sounding much better now. We will iron out all these problems, hopefully sooner rather than later. Right, okay, group 2, anything else to add?
I mean, we didn't discuss locations, but I mean, one of the ones I put on the Padlet was the Ousburn, just because I feel it gives a really different side to Newcastle. It's much more laid back, and compared with sort of the city with all the architecture, it's just got a completely different feel. So I thought it'd be a nice way to balance out what Newcastle is about, the more creative aspects, and then the more commercial. So that was just a personal idea that I put on the Padlet, but unfortunately, yeah, we didn't get a chance to discuss that because of the feedback. So I don't know what Nick and Lindsay.
Well, I would certainly second that. I was at Ousburn Farm with our little grandson last week and thinking what an amazing place it is for all sorts of different photography.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a
they're
good...
having they're having a market there soon as well with loads of different stores, and I think that would be good to photograph.
It will.
I mean, Jane, I guess we are talking about taking photographs with people on. How important is it to get disclaimers or whatever that you need to get for people to say they give their permission to be included on a photo?
It's important just to ask rather than assume. I mean, you know, photographers, when they're doing street photography, often shoot from the hip and don't ask and just grab shots, you know, left, right and centre. And that's not really what we're about. And if we're in a group, I mean, with 14 of us, we're going to have to split up. So it's obviously, you know, not too many photographers walking around in a single group. So we will have to split up. But yes, so the position is, if you were, say, market stall, just like when we do the Christmas markets, you ask the stall holder, is it okay to take a few photos? And then, you know, you wait for the permission and then you go ahead and take the images. If you've got a telephoto lens, you can stand back. You could be taking images of anything in the background, so that's not such a concern. But with, say, a smaller lens, where people are up close and personal, you've got to ask permission, because otherwise it can turn quite nasty and it's like an infringement of rights. But people don't have a right to privacy in a public place, and so, you know, just bear that in mind. You're not breaking the law. Okay. Anything else to add, group 2?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, yeah, thanks.
Okay, so thanks for that. So great idea for location. And what we'll be doing when we go out on the shoot next week, obviously we'll be meeting at the Theatre Royal and we'll be moving around that area, around the arcade, around the Granger Market, and obviously can do some note taking, either using your phone, using your camera, just in order to get an idea of the sort of photographs that perhaps you would like to capture around Granger Town. So it's always good to be able to revisit a location as often as possible, because obviously you can get better shots. But I agree what Graham was saying about permissions for the Granger Market, because they were doing a lot of restoration work on the ceiling there before COVID, so I'm not really sure what the position is there. Haven't been there for a while, so I'll have to check that out and certainly get permission first. Okay, thank you for that. And now moving on to group 3. Group 3, anything to add? Have you got a spokesperson?
We didn't elect one, but I'm happy to do it if everyone else is happy for me to do it.
Certainly.
Go for it, David.
Yeah, that's fine, David.
Okay, right, thank you. Well, we did probably have a little bit longer than the others. We did get a few thoughts down, and Ashley had a great idea about the start of the day, just seeing the city waking up. you know, maybe the metro starting or the street cleaners starting to clear up the mess from the night before, whatever it happens to be, that sort of thing, especially around transport. And getting some of the transport in.
Okay.
So we think that would be, yeah, because we said we have to start sometime in the day, somewhere, so that might be a way of doing it. It wouldn't have to be necessarily quite as early as a sunrise either.
Not at this time of year, hopefully.
Oh.
Okay, so yeah, it would be an early start. So we'd have to see what everybody else feels about that. You know, again, you know, as these ideas are coming up, you can always pop on the Padlet what your thoughts are. You can email me, and if everybody is willing, I can always exchange email addresses so that those of you that don't know each other can get in touch. So you can let me know if you give your permission for your email address to be shared for that purpose.
I think as well, Jane, you already mentioned that you're going to have us hunting in packs, pinning down poor unsuspecting members of the public so we can photograph them. But you could also say that some people may be more interested in doing some parts of these than others, so you don't necessarily have to have the whole group doing a particular one. So the early risers amongst us, and I'm not one of them, might like to do the early stuff and etc. if you fancy doing that.
Exactly. It's, you know, all of this is optional. I know some people find it quite difficult to get into a dialogue and have a conversation with a stranger. I mean, those of you that have been taking classes for a long time will have find this quite a bit easier, but it's something that you've really got to overcome, get talking to people, explain what the project's about, and quite often you'll find that people are more than keen to actually get involved. So very good, that one, David, and very good suggestions about just having the group split up. Anything else?
Yes, we talked about the football, which I mentioned on the Padlet,
yes,
and whether be able to get permission to go into St James's Park and get some photographs of players or whoever or whatever in that. Ideally, you'd get the picture of the terraces. I know they are letting people back in. Now, whether we'd be able to get in or not, I don't know. Or if any of the group happen to be mad keen Magpie supporters who are already going to one of the matches, because there's only a couple left, as Emma mentioned. But otherwise, might have to just speak to somebody at the ground and see if it's possible.
Yeah, well, when it's an educational visit, it does open quite a few doors. So that's something we could certainly look into, permission on at St James's. I thought you would be at the Stadium of Light, David, right?
Fortunately, the Stadium of Light, there is another expression for it, doesn't fall into the boundaries of City of Newcastle.
Sadly not. But I'm just amazed that you're actually mentioning Newcastle.
I know. I'll have to wash my mouth out later, but never mind.
Okay, so...
And at the other end of the day, we also thought, I mean, obviously one of the things Newcastle is really famous for is nightlife. So Margie's volunteered to get her disco kit on and go clubbing for the good of us all. So whether we
one of you do the same, David.
Yeah, I've got a couple of dresses, Margie, no problem.
Good. The curly wig.
Wearing a frock is very liberating.
I'm very sure that I've seen it.
So yeah, nightlife might be something to try and get. I know it's not really like nightlife at the moment in the middle of the pandemic, but should be something we could do with it.
Well, I know I put on the Padlet, it's come back to life very quickly on Osborne Road, so I'm sure from next week onwards we will see a lot more. There will be a lot more activity around the quayside and the big market and, you know, the diamond strip or whatever it is called.
Yeah.
But that would be one where that was what I had in mind when I was asking about, you know, getting people's permission to have the photographs taken. Because
if they're unconscious in a gutter, you don't need to ask.
I would advocate for nighttime shooting, not to do it on our own, because
yes,
you know, it can lead to outcomes you weren't expecting.
Yeah,
definitely strengthen numbers. But if we just come across as a bunch of paparazzi, you know.
Yeah.
The problem. The problem
Another
normally
thing
is...
I found very useful in the past is, you know, the lanyards that we've been supplied with on courses which have Newcastle City Learning thing on. If somebody's asked me a question about what you're doing here, photographing, etc., I just show them out and say, oh, I'm on a course and we're doing this, that, and the other. I even used it at one of the waterfalls in Northumberland, but I find it really does relax people if you just show them the badge.
Yeah.
Can we have some, please, Jane?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can certainly see if we can get some new ones issued if for anybody that doesn't have one of those. So, again, you can let me know if you need an ID badge because obviously that's going to be a big help. I'm just making a note of that. So those of you
that would be good, Jane. I don't have one.
Yeah,
no, I haven't got one.
We should.
I was photographing a waterfall where people were jumping in, and including like teenagers and stuff. And one of the parents said, "What are you up to?" and everything. And I was actually trying to do a particular type of shot where that people like in a long line. And I explained, there was three of us there. I explained we're just like practicing our photography, and they were totally chill and relaxed. And like, what would you like us to do? Where would you like us to jump, etc.
Yeah, we've heard about people like you, Graham. Yeah.
Okay, then. So
and the only other thing that actually we didn't discuss in the group that just crossed my mind, and it was because somebody mentioned getting a picture of 2021. Well, would you want a vaccination centre?
Aren't we supposed to show it in a good light, not in? Would that be depressing?
Well, that is probably the best light you could show it. Better than going into the intensive care ward. Because everybody's very happy. I've never seen people so joyful as to get a vaccination before, to get somebody sticking a needle in their arm.
The only problem is going to be permissions. Because for something like that, you know, and when you think how large some of these vaccination centres are, how many permissions you would need. I can look into it to see if there's an easy way around it. I'll not discount it completely, but that would be the only concern, is getting the permissions.
Well, the one I was thinking of that might be easiest to get would be Gosforth Park.
It's actually only going to be running for about another 2 weeks, I think. I think they're moving it to the Eagles after that.
Right.
The Friends volunteer there, so... But whether they'd have,
just a thought. It doesn't have to be, but it certainly gives an idea of the times.
The Centre for Life that's a vaccination centre. The Centre for Life, right bang in the centre.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I went for mine.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much all we got through, wasn't it, everyone? I don't think there's anything else.
Yeah, you covered it quite well. The only thing that's sort of cropped up in my mind and we've all been talking about is sort of not to miss the elephant in the room with this. So, you know, we do have the keep in the Black Gate. It'd be a shame if we all went out and we caught stuff and then we didn't sort of get the essence.
Exactly.
Of Newcastle.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Ashley. And, you know, as I said before, this is a personal approach. So you don't have to just focus on people. If, you know, you want to take 3 images depicting the main sites of Newcastle, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to, you know, go with the flow. But I think, you know, that's a really important point, to get some of the landmarks in as well. Okay, so I'll put this up on the classroom so that we can follow up on some of these points, but everybody's made some, you know, really good contributions and given us something to work with, which is excellent. And again, apologies for that sound that we experienced earlier, which was not so good. Okay. So we will return to all of this, and I'll see what I can action in terms of bringing some information forward for permissions, etc.
Just going back to that keep thing. I know somebody who does photo shoots in the keep, and the guy who's actually works in the keep, he does acting when they do reenactment type things in there. So. You know, if you wanted to do some particular photography at the keep, having a word with the kind of like manager guys about what the possibilities might be, rather than just pitching up and photographing it, because they've got access. They've recreated famous paintings in there with actors. They've done all sorts of things inside it. I've seen a lot of the images that they've done and how they went about it, and I know a couple of people are involved in it.
Would there not be a cost involved?
I don't know. I know they've had grants for doing it before. So, but I'm just saying, like, just speak to the manager and saying this is a project that's going on in Newcastle. Kind of like might likely to include this in. Is any chance of anybody getting dressed up or something? I don't know. I'm just saying that he's used to having photo shoots happen at the keep, and it might, nothing ventured, nothing gained, sort of stuff.
Well, that's really helpful. I'll look into that and see what transpires. So again, there's just a few kind of headings that have been put up here for you to be thinking about. Just really a starting point, if you like, because it could be that you concentrate on, say, some street photography, and then on a later shoot you do some work on Old Newcastle, and you like that better. So it's probably a good idea to, keep an open mind on this, but as I say, I will be asking you to let me know what your ideas are so far, so that we don't have too much duplication of effort. So few ideas for you to mull over here. Most of them have been covered in one way or another with what's come out of the breakout rooms. So again, just bear a few of those ideas in mind.
Jane, on that one, from the rooftops, do you remember, it's the caretaker guy at down at the bottom of the site who needs to be spoken to ask to get up to the alleys and on top of the main buildings for the iconics of the Tyne Bridge?
I did look into that, and then I spoke to a development manager, and she said under no circumstances is any photography to be allowed.
Okay.
So it was, a really good idea, and I did look into it, but unfortunately they said definitely not from health and safety point of view.
Yeah, I thought they might say that.
Yeah, but never mind. You've got to try these things because sometimes you get lucky, don't you? Okay.
And Jay,
yes?
from the roof bit, I did a couple of shots from the top of the keep.
Yes.
And that gives a good perspective, so you can get in there no problem.
You can, and different times of day, you can get some really inspiring shots from that location. So you could, do the whole thing from the rooftops and, create 3 really interesting images. And then, of course, the other thing to bear in mind, once you've got a showcase like the City Library and you've got 3 of your images there, hopefully with a little plaque underneath with your name on, just identifying the photographer in each case, it's also a way of getting your name known and also making some sales. So, think about the commercial aspect as well. So I'm just going to run through a few ideas. So images sourced from various locations. Some of them I've just pulled off Getty, some of them are mine, just to really give you a flavour of a few ideas. So we're thinking about framing, we're thinking about, some of the creative ways that we can showcase landmarks, and quite often it's having that human element that makes things interesting. So it's just adding a sense of scale and just a little bit of creativity to the images that we're taking. See, that is quite an interesting abstract in its own right. Immediately recognisable to us, but the fact that you've got the 2 people framed within the frame just makes it that little bit better, just a bit more creative. And then the other thing to think about is the choice of lens. So when you're out and about, you know, quite often you might think, oh, well, I'm going for cityscapes, that type of thing, wide-ranging shots of the river. You might be inclined to set out with a wide angle. But, you know, just remember that, you know, you can get some fantastic compression going with a telephoto. And again, you know, shots from the Tyne Bridge, you can get some interesting compression and create something that looks different, even though it's a familiar scene. But it's because you're using a different lens and getting different effects that it works really well. Again, the human element, and you know, that person doesn't have to be recognizable. This type of shot, you know, there's room for this as well. As we were saying, it's nice to have, you know, some of the landmarks in, but obviously not too much repetition. And then we're going to go for maybe some candid shots as well. Interesting characters. And then there's the creative stuff. So how you're going to, you know, be working with a really wide dynamic range, you know, getting some very interesting shadows and highlights and something a little bit more gritty. So that's just really a little bit more to get the ball rolling, just to get you thinking along the right lines. So just to reiterate, please email me your project ideas by Thursday the 20th of May. And then, as I said, we're going to coordinate those ideas to avoid duplication. When you send me that email, there's obviously a lot of hoops to jump through in terms of risk assessment and what we can and what we can't do. Can you please remember to include your emergency contact name and number in the email, because I'll have to have that information with me and take that on the photo shoot. We'll also need masks as well, and that is my work mobile for those of you that haven't got it. Just when we're out and about, if we get split up, then obviously it's easier if I've got those contact numbers and you can contact me, just so that we can regroup and it makes things a lot easier. So I just mentioned that is a work number, and so it's only turned on from Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Okay.
Can I just ask a question? I know you've got 3 email addresses. Which email address do we use to contact you?
It's the jane.rennick@newcastle.gov.uk. So that's the one that I use the most. So I check that 100 times a day. Okay. Just take out that. Okay. Have you made a note of that?
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. But as I say, this presentation will go up onto Classroom so that you can look at it again if needs be. Okay. Right, so we'll just go through a little bit of theory. Would anybody like a break, or are you all okay to keep going?
I'm fine.
I'm okay. Hi.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Right. Okay then, so we'll just keep going until we've finished this section anyway. So the theory that I'd like to look at is finding a frame within a frame to spice up your composition. So the frame can be either natural or it can be man-made. Frames, we can look out for anything from windows, doorways, an avenue of trees, shrubs, and the frame doesn't have to completely surround the subject, but it should be prominent enough to guide the viewer's eye through to the focal point of the image. So the frames are a great way to simplify busy scenes or hide unattractive areas. So this is a shot of Bath Abbey. And absolutely huge structure, and the size is obviously higher than everything else, so it is quite difficult to compose a reasonable shot of the Abbey. But here we've found an archway, and that creates a more balanced and interesting composition, having that in the frame. So when you're actively looking for frames, you see them everywhere. And it can be challenging, as was this one, but walking around a subject in a circuit, you can often find something that can use just to spice up your composition a little bit more. So here, the simple example, the frame within the frame, finding a good composition using doorways and archways. And again, we've got that sense of scale and interest where we've got the human form framed in the image. Tree branches, another really nice frame, obviously not going all the way around, but just again, creates a nice frame for the human interest. So this time of year, where blossom is still available on the trees, where the foreground is lacking, you can consider shooting through blossom, foliage, or something similar, branches, and it can create a lovely soft effect. Very, very effective, especially if you're going for portraiture. So here we've got an example just shooting through foliage. You can see where the photographer is in relation to the subject, and it just works really well, especially with a telephoto lens. So you get this lovely sort of blur of abstract shapes. Helps with framing. It can make the portrait appear more intimate, but you do need to make sure as you're shooting through that foliage that you have got a clear view of the person's face, and then you just review and then go again. So this works really, really well. Again, just using selective focus. It could be you're sitting outside a cafe and there's, say, a plant or something like that, and you can use that to form the frame. So always something to look out for because it can work so well. So familiar sight, I know a lot of you have actually captured something similar to this when we've been out at South Shields, and this is, as I was just saying, expanding on using foliage and just using grasses to shoot through, so that selective focus, making sure you've got that locked onto, in this case, the lookout tower, and again you can get that nice compression in the landscape if you do have a telephoto lens. That works really well. So other things we can look at: mirrors, pillars, arches, windows. So all of these frames can just work incredibly well. It just strengthens your composition so much. So again, just to mention, around and about the city centre, I'm sure you're all aware of this. For city centre photography, it's best to go handheld. Tripods can be a real trip hazard. Different when we move down the quayside, but for where the busy areas are, unless you can get somewhere that you're tucked away out of danger, it's obviously better just to go for a handheld shot. So when we're looking at our camera settings, as we've said, the purpose of the frame is to direct the viewer's gaze towards the subject, and so obviously that's going to be your focal point. So you can consider single point AF and single servo AF. And again, just think about that sweet spot on your lens, and we've covered this in quite a bit of detail to get the sharpest shot, and then obviously shooting in RAW, and then think about auto white balance, which obviously you can change later if needs be. So the other thing that I keep mentioning is how useful it can be to use your phone to make notes when you're out and about. But sometimes it could be because you haven't got access to your camera, or it could just be that you want to have something visual you can refer to, and then you can go back to a location, and it could just be quite helpful to have those notes. So those of you that have done Google Classroom know how good Google Keep is for making those kind of notes. The notes apps on iPhone and other smartphones particularly useful, because then of course you can use the camera feature and take pictures to go in alongside your notes, and so you've got that visual reference just to go back to. And so that's something that I personally use all the time and found invaluable. Okay, so have we got any questions on that? Or any comments?
Not from me, thanks, Jane.
No? Okay, so that's going to be one of the tasks when we're out next week. So there's going to be two tasks, two main tasks. So the first task is going to be concerning candid photography, and we're going to be the main focus is going to be taking candid shots when we're at that location around Granger Town. Okay, so that's going to be the first remit, and then the second remit is going to be framing, how we can actually take stronger images, and we're going to be looking out for frames within a frame, or just how we can take a photograph in a better way with a stronger composition. Okay, so those are going to be the two tasks that we look at when we're out for the photo shoot.
Just regarding the photo shoot, Jane, when you've had thoughts back and everything, would it be possible to give us a brief outline of the sort of the route that we'll be taking, just so we can have a bit of a think in our head as to what we might be looking for, because we'll be familiar with a lot of it. But like if I knew I was going to X place, I'd be thinking about, well, what might I be looking for when I get there? So yeah. If you could just give us a brief sort of like little drawn on a map as to the route.
Yeah, that's no problem. So yeah, we can. But again, I think, you know, we will have to be flexible to a certain extent, because we are a large group. We are going to have to split up for the actual photography time, and then keep regrouping as and when needs be. But yes, I can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing that I'll leave you with is a look at Photoshop calculations. So you'll see on the classwork tab that we have, just bring that back, that we have a project here for you to look at, and that is the calculations command. So very quick, very easy, and so that's what I'll leave you with to have a look at. So how you can create a very quick black and white just using Photoshop techniques. And then once you've done that, there's an upload for you to upload the before and after of your own version of the calculations command. For those of you that haven't seen it, or perhaps haven't come across this, I've recorded a short video on DxO Pure RAW versus Lightroom for noise removal. I'll not play it again because some of you have already been in other classes this week, and I don't want to put you through that repetition. It's only 6 minutes. You can get a free trial of DxO Pure RAW for 30 days. and then perhaps use it on some images that you may have which have noise in them, and then you can see the difference, the before and the after, which is a real game changer. So I'm seriously impressed with Pure Raw. Not only is it for its noise removal properties, but also as a base to start your raw processing when you're ready to do so. So an excellent piece of software. If you haven't used it before, you can use it as a standalone, and so very worthwhile to have a look at. Okay.
Highly unlikely, Jane. I'm probably the only one here who shoots Fuji, but DxO cannot read Fuji raw files.
Oh, that's
just
such
in
a
case
shame.
anybody else shoots Fuji. But I use Topaz Denoise AI, which is mega impressive as well as Sharpen AI. But if you happen to use Fuji, DxO cannot read a Fuji file. The reason being is that Fuji uses an X-Tran sensor, whereas everybody else uses a Bayer sensor.
So yeah, shame about that, but at least you have got an alternative, which is also very good. Okay,
and that before and after, presumably it's a colour before and the black and white after.
That's right, yes. Yeah. Okay then, so has anybody got any questions, or are we all good to go?